Our first guest this morning is Omaid Sharifi, who is fresh off attending the inaugural Global Artivism Conference, which is organized by the Tshwane University of Technology in partnership with the Riky Rick Foundation. And this event aims to promote activism through art, hence artivism. It was attended by more than 300 artists, academics, and others who are involved in using the arts to bring about global social change. And Omaid is an artivist, president of ArtLords, fellow at Harvard University, Millennium Leadership Fellow with the Atlantic Council, as well as a member of Civicus. Omaid, good morning. Sobh khair, khosh amadid.
Salam, sobh khair. Good morning to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, and a good morning to everyone who is watching us today.
I'm really lovely to have you. So I want to start with, the genesis of ArtLords. It's now 10 years old, and I would love for our viewers to hear what your origin story is and what artivism means to you.
Thank you. So I was born, raised, educated in Afghanistan, in Kabul. That is my city. And I was until recently forced out of my city, which was when the Taliban came in 2021. So ArtLords started 10 years ago, and it was because we were fed up with the warlords, with the corrupt lords, with all the drug lords. We wanted to be the positive lords in my city. And we used those big, ugly blast walls, which was in the city, mushrooming all over Afghanistan, as our canvas to paint murals against corruption, to paint murals for countering violent extremism, to paint murals about public health, about freedom and democracy and all of that. So ArtLords is somehow a voice for all those voiceless people in Afghanistan that they felt they're not engaged in their day-to-day politics of their country. They're not making decisions about the future of their country. So that's how ArtLords came to being in a very hopeless time for Afghanistan in 2014. And it became somehow viral for all the people because everybody was coming and painting with us, getting a brush and starting to paint on a big wall.
We're showing our viewers some of those murals that you paint and you put all across the city. As you say, it is basically done on these concrete barricades, which are meant to provide protection from bomb blasts, but it creates sort of like this canyon-esque maze all across Kabul. I want to go to one of these murals, right, that you painted, and there was a giant mural of law professor and human rights activist Hamida Barmaki. And what was interesting is this was done near the home of the warlord who was associated with her killing. Now, in 2011, for our viewers who don't know, Barmaki, her husband and 4 children were killed in a suicide attack that was claimed by a group controlled by one of the most notorious warlords in your country's history, and this is Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. It was soon painted over. But you would have anticipated that this would have happened, so why do it?
Look, we wanted to really go and face these warlords because this guy, Hekmatyar, was now living in Kabul. He made a peace deal with the government. He came back to Kabul. He was living in a palace with all the security. He had a caravan of cars, of 30 cars when he was traveling around the city. But this guy actually had killed so many people. And I wanted to confront this person. We went right in front of his house, and we painted the face of Hamida Barmaki, which was a human rights commissioner, and he was killed in a grocery store with her children, with her husband. So look at the brutality of the experiences that we have in Afghanistan.
And apparently him and his group claimed responsibility.
They claimed responsibility proudly that they have bombed, sent a suicide attacker bombing a grocery store in the heart of Kabul to just show that they can bomb the heart of the city. We painted this mural saying that we will not forget. We know what you did. If we will not forgive you, God is not forgiving you. So that's an hour later, his gunman came. They tried to remove the mural. They put paint on it. There was a huge media frenzy around that one. There was even rumors that he wanted to kill me or do harm to our group and all of that. But I think that is the kind of work we wanted to do, to show the people that we can confront these people. We can come up to them because the culture of impunity in my country is crazy. Everybody, whatever you do, if you're a Soviet-backed government, if you're a Mujahid, if you're a Talib, you do whatever you want to do, and then you're forgiven, and you come back and be living like in a palace. It's not the case. And how long we can go with the cycle of violence and impunity? It has to stop at some moment.
We'll talk about the personal cost to you in just a moment, but I want to pick up on the theme that you've just mentioned now. And last month, Afghan authorities ratified this detailed law, which is called the Law on the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice, which imposes severe restrictions on the Afghan population as a whole. But as always, Omaid, it takes a special focus on women, significantly tightening laws on women's behavior. So women have to cover their bodies entirely, cover their faces, even their voices now are forbidden in public. They can't interact with non-Muslims. They can't use public transport alone. They can't look at men, you know, to whom they're not related by blood or marriage. And we've seen the steady program of invisibilizing women in Afghanistan. Share with us through your lens the experience of women in your country. And maybe not just going, you know, to the last rise of the Taliban again, but all the way back to the late 90s when they significantly came to power.
Thank you for bringing this up, Iman. I think I always say the Taliban are afraid of two things. It is the women of Afghanistan, which is the better half of Afghanistan, and they're afraid of art. So these two are completely banned in Afghanistan. Even the voice of women is banned. I come to South Africa. I believe this is the home of activism. It's a pilgrimage for me to come here because you experienced apartheid here, and we are experiencing that gender apartheid, that gender slavery in my country right now. And the woman, imagine that you cannot travel, you cannot go to a public park, you cannot even go to public hammams, which was a traditional thousands of years in my country. And now your voice is also haram, and nobody can hear your voice. So the women in my country and the people I am in touch to every day, and the artists who represent ArtLords, they are in a prison. They feel suffocated. They feel that they are not considered human beings anymore. It's something that these Talib commanders, they're now doing third marriage, fourth marriage, with all their armored vehicles and whatever they can get as ghanimat, which is in jihad, whatever you conquer, you get whatever things that you can. But apart from that, they're oppressing any decent voices, they're oppressing artists, activists, they're putting them in jail, torturing them, and the women, they're completely gone from the public life in that country.
We think of Farkhunda Malikzada, who in 2015 was burnt alive in the very heart of Kabul, and this happened through a mob of angry men. And what was so stark about that was hundreds of people just stood by and watched this happen. There was a false rumor that she had blasphemed the Prophet of Islam. What does that event say about the challenges of women in Afghanistan? You've already gone through some of those challenges, but you also mentioned that, you know, one of two things the Taliban is most afraid of is women. And ironically, this particular woman was also studying Islamic law and Sharia and so on. So, but just a rumor as a woman can put you in harm's way.
Yeah, I remember that day vividly because the moment I heard that news, I just sat down and I broke in tears because in the heart of Kabul, a group of men gives themselves the right to lynch a woman, a young woman who was studying Islam and Sharia law, who just out of a rumor because of a mullah, they just mob lynched him, and the police and everybody was just looking at it. So I think that is, on that day, the blood of every Afghan was spilled on that street. And in front of that mosque, I was painting mural of Farkhunda every single year on that day, right in front of that mosque, because to remind the people of my country what they have done. And I think Farkhunda and Farkhunda's blood will never forgive us, because that was, what we did with that was crazy. And I think I take that blame because there was a lot of young people of my generation who did that on that day. So this is also, I'll take you just one step back, because during the Soviet Union invasion of Afghanistan, and when the Americans tried to raise this issue of jihad against the Soviets, they sent us books and education, which was like, my school books were 1 gun plus 1 gun is 2 guns, and you can kill 2 Soviet soldiers with that. So when you're brainwashing the whole generation of Afghans to get a gun and do jihad against the infidels, and the moment the infidels, the Soviets are gone, you leave that country with all that mentality and all those bad apples, what do you expect? So the whole generation, my generation, I just chose to get a book and a brush. I would have had access to a gun anytime, and the education that I had, I could have been any of those people on that street. But that is, I think, the time that we also look at it, what international community does to that country, and they have to take a bit of responsibility as well.
Let's stay in that before we talk about the personal risk that you experience. I mean, what is your observation of different countries who have been in Afghanistan for one reason or the other? We think the British, we think the Soviets, we think the Americans and others. I mean, you've lived there, and you know, your parents as well have witnessed all of this, what does it leave you thinking?
I was born in the middle of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and then the civil wars, like the Brits, the Soviets, the Americans, the NATO. We take responsibility for our incompetence, for some of the corruption which was happening in that. But when the international community is taking that responsibility, that is never happening, because they feel that they have not done anything wrong, but except that if you look at it, every time there is a challenge, it's a problem that they have created. And now it's their responsibility to solve it for us, because I cannot do it alone. We cannot, as Afghans, cannot do it alone, because it is a problem created by these international community, be it NATO forces, be it Americans, be it the Soviets, or the Chinese, or the Pakistanis.
Omaid, you do this work along with your team at great risk, and you've been threatened on social media, you've been branded infidels, but you still push on. Talk to us about why you still do it. Are you still living in Afghanistan, and what is the message to the rest of the team still there? I mean, are they able to still paint these murals and protest in the way that you have?
We continue to have a small office in Kabul. We continue to do the work, but it's at great risk. As you mentioned, I've lost members of my family. I've lost at least 3 members of ArtLords to explosions. It is devastating when I talk about this, because we have both lost treasure, time, and also human life doing this work. But we decided to do this consciously. I could have been living anywhere in the world very happily, but we decided to do this work in Afghanistan until it was almost impossible. So August 15, 2021, I was painting a mural on those walls. Right that moment, people were panicking around me and said that the Taliban are in the city. So that is the moment I realized that, okay, these guys are back, because I experienced Taliban when they were in Afghanistan in 1996, and I knew what it means, because I was seeing people getting hanged, getting shot in the football stadiums and all of that. As a young kid, I experienced all of those. And then that moment rang another bell in my head that they're coming back. And this time, because I had so much threats, this will be my time, and my mom was so worried for me. So a week after Taliban took over this time, I was pushed to leave my country. I miss it every day. I miss my mountains. I have all my precious stones of the country in my hand, because that keeps my heart warm. But today I feel terrible that I'm not there. But the work, the resistance continues. We paint, we make movies. We will not let the Taliban win easily. And I know they will be gone, and they will be gone soon.
So we see the work that you do with people that we immediately recognize. Riky Rick, the Riky Rick Foundation, he passed away tragically in South Africa as well. With Civicus and people like Kumi Naidu and so on. What is the collective role, you know, in terms of what you all do together, why that's so important to build these networks of collaboration?
I think artivism is the next significant thing for the world. I think activists using the tool of art can really find solutions for a lot of problems that we're facing, issues of justice, climate change, and all of that. So I think it is time for the world to really take this seriously. And what we do with Riky Rick Foundation, with all our partners around the world, is to mainstream artivism, to let everybody in our partners and governments know that art and culture is here. Let's make sure that we touch human soul, their hearts, and find a way that we can use this important tool to find solutions for our own problems.